Say what?
Hello, welcome back. It's time for Say What, where we hear from those connected to our industry about what's going on in our world of electrical apprenticeship. And that always includes the topics you're suggesting. So please don't hesitate to share those with us. I'm your host, Cindy Sandifer. And to say that technology has come a long way and completely changed our lives, big understatement, huge. Just look at what we're doing here, a podcast, right? Where we use Zoom, something that I think prior to 2020, most people weren't engaging with. We see it in the classroom, we see it on the job site, we see it in our cars, it's on our phones, and our industry has certainly been impacted. But not just that, we're the agents of this change, right? So we're impacting, not just being impacted. And so as we see this happening every day, we want to talk about it. Just a side note, we recorded this episode in March, and you're seeing it or hearing it in July. So I'm sure that there have been changes and advancements since this conversation. But I want you to help me welcome a few folks that are going to chat with us about this really cool, incredible topic. We've got Matthew Apfel, Jeff Beavers, and Jim Simpson. So I want to start by being very candid. I am not technologically savvy, right? In pretty much any way you could think about it. So this topic is fascinating to me. I don't have anything to offer as far as experience, knowledge and all that, but I feel like I'm telling on myself, but I still get blown away by the internet. It's like, but where is it? Like, I am truly that person where it's like, but how? How am I accessing? Where does it live? Or phone calls. It's like, how can I be on the phone and you're on your cell phone and we're able to talk? Like, those things truly, and I love it. Like, I don't ever want to stop being fascinated by these things. And so as technology keeps coming, right? Because it's not going to stop. And Jim and I were having this conversation, what we used to do on our phone versus what we do now. And that's one of a gazillion things in this world of technology. But you all being experts, you all being immersed in it every day in, day out, experiencing it, what are some things you would say have influenced our industry when it comes to technology? How has it influenced what we do in our industry?
I can go ahead and start out. I was having a conversation with some people at lunch today and talking about a presentation I did a couple of weeks ago. And I started the presentation out by stating, if you look at the year 2000 to the year 2024, we've gone from the Flintstone era to the Jetson era in that time frame. And it's so true. Who would have thought that we'd be able to have a telephone conversation, a video conference over our watch? And the Jetsons got it right. Way back in the 70s. And, it's just amazing to see the way technology changes and changes the way we do everything in our daily lives. So, and it's everything that we do in the electrical industry that helps make those changes and adapt to those changes.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of those changes are so subtle but so plentiful that we're not realizing them all the time. That Cindy, you mentioned that you're not technologically advanced and you don't know this, but this technology has affected our industry in so many ways that you just don't realize it. You already have a grasp on automation and you already have a grasp on networking, but you're so used to it in your daily life now that it's an everyday thing. Everybody uses some kind of consumer-based automation product to help them out with their lighting in their home or the audio and the video that they broadcast for their TV, for their entertainment. Those are the types of things that are becoming so prevalent that it's just second nature to everybody now. But it's that consumer-driven focus that's really, really affected how we teach and what we teach, and how it hits the classroom and the job sites, to where those technologies are being utilized in the field for, bringing up and reviewing drawings and blueprints and how to submit those things. It's the communication. I think that you know more than you realize. And that's kind of one of the things that we do these days in the classroom is we kind of draw that out of people. And I use a garage door opener as an example of basic motor control, and then people go, "Oh, it's that simple."
I just did that. I was like, oh,
Oh,
oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. Jeff, what are your thoughts on this? Like, go ahead. Everybody's
Yeah.
blowing my mind today. This is great.
Yeah, no, we love the history, and sometimes our history is like yesterday with technology. But when I look at how the technology, power, and data has changed our lives or impact our lives, just look at how when power was invented and it started replacing fuel oil or coal or oil lamps, right? Similarly, at the same time frame is when the telephone started to gain momentum. But I think that the telephone actually was used to say, have you changed from oil to light bulbs yet? So it quickly changed how we were able to be more productive with electricity, have longer days with each other without having to have the lights off. But it just moved so quickly. And Jim, you're right about the Jetsons. Jetsons is more like a documentary now than a cartoon,
Right.
right? Jim, we just had, was it February, a data center sent to the moon with Lone Star Ventures, right? Because the thing with data, it's the new oil is the slogan now. It's so valuable, and so we want to do what we can to protect it. When they look at data back in the early days of like Caesar and Augusta, those libraries, and how that y'all could have to remind me of that, the burning of that library, Alexandria. What was
Mhm.
that? When imagine how far advanced we would be if we didn't lose that data
Mm.
centuries ago, right? So that data is so valuable that they want to back up data on the moon because of all the chaos on Earth, whether it's storms or floods or hurricanes or wars, right? So it's a proof of concept, and that is happening right. We're witnessing this change in real time, right before our eyes, and so it's exciting to be in this industry.
It
yeah.
is. Yeah, like I'm I'm using and this isn't, I'm not sponsored by Remarkable. But maybe I should try. But somebody on staff was using one and now like it's multiplied. But like I'm sitting here currently taking notes, right? As you all are talking and I'm thinking about things. And this goes with me everywhere. It connects to my Dropbox. I can access it on my laptop. Now I'm not having to have paper everywhere or like, oh man, I left that at home and I'm at the office. And, I think, Matt, to your point, there's so much I don't think about that is the advancements, right? And I guess it's really who we are. You mentioned light bulbs. I mean, that's what our industry is, right? We are advancements like constantly.
Yeah. And it's to the point to where, and I think that the industry is doing such a good job of it that, as you said, you don't realize it. And we want these things to be commonplace, common nature every day. We want these things to be integrated in lives. And I think that's a beautiful thing about it is that it's affecting education, it's affecting healthcare. Jim, and Jeff, I really like your points about how it's, this industry has promoted other industries and advanced other industries, either A, as a sales and marketing tactic, or B, as, expanding life expectancy for people and humans as we know it. But everything that we do and how it's influenced us, it builds communities. It provides opportunities. And those are the things that, to me at least, make this truly worth it.
Matt, you mentioned when we first started this how technology is all around us and how Cindy may think she's not technically savvy, but she really is because she's living it every day. And you
Mm.
think about how IoT, Internet of Things, has changed our lives. And every single one of us has IoT devices in our houses. And it's growing exponentially, so, and it's making our lives easier. And we just don't give it a second thought. 5 years ago, people were going, what is this Internet of Things? How do we train on it? Well, you don't. It's manufacturer driven and it just makes our lives simpler by automating things and recognizing that something is wrong and fixing it, or sending a message to us that something is wrong. Think about your Wi-Fi thermostat in your house that can send you a signal that says, hey, your temperature is down to 62 degrees. It should be 68. Those are things that, technology has driven and made our lives a whole lot easier.
Okay, wait. IoT. I just want to like this for me, and then those that may not be
Jim, I just
Internet of Things. That's like and that's
Yes.
just anything that involves the internet, correct? Like anything and everything.
Devices connected to the internet.
Okay, that's what. Sorry, I did
Yep.
mean that.
Yep.
I meant that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff.
absolutely. No, it's great because that's a good thought starter for this. In the last 20 years, I don't think 20 years ago we heard IoT. In fact, if you were wiring a house, if you're a residential contractor, we had the advent of wireless. And it said, hey, why do I need any telecom wiring in the house? Everything's going wireless. Well, who would have thought we'd have pet feeders on our home network with a video camera, right? So I think the average home today in America, at least as of 2022, had 16 pieces of equipment on their network. You're talking tablets, computers, smart TVs, Xboxes. You got the Jim. What else? We got the ovens, the refrigerator, the dishwasher, garage door openers, ring door cameras, Wi-Fi pet feeder. So that conversation about everything's going wireless. Well, the future is wired and wireless. I mean, that it's just so how quickly things change and how quickly society adopts them, and they expect to have that same type of connectivity.
Yeah, and the time between, like you said, it's like something seems weird and like, why would I do that? That's odd or awkward, or I don't want to try to learn that. And then within like no time, you've got it. You're comfortable with it. You're using it. You know what I mean? Like it's not Flintstones to Jetsons, or it is, but it's in a time warp, right?
Yeah.
Like now.
Right. Look at how quickly Uber changed the culture, right? We grew up saying, don't get into a car with a stranger. I mean, Uber, like seemingly overnight, changed that culture, right? To where you're trusting, you're getting to a car with a complete stranger. In fact, I'll order an Uber for my daughters who are in a different state. I'll text them the driver information, the license plate, and I say, get in. And now we're advancing to driverless car services. That's how quickly the culture changed, and society adapts it and uses it and benefits from it, and they'll expect to have it.
Yeah, and with like Uber or Lyft, the other benefit is I can watch, right? So I know where that driver is supposed to be going, and I can share my location. So like as soon as I get in a ride, it automatically sends my husband and my oldest daughter that I'm in a ride. They can track where I'm at. So Matt, I'm back to you. Like, yes, I'm using stuff, but I still don't, it's still the whole, how does it work? Now that is still mind boggling, but yeah, just how much we use it.
And I think that's one of the ways that we excel in what we do. The relationship of IBW, NECA, the Electrical Training Alliance, we really get to our students, to our contractors, to our consumers, to our members of the theory of the not just how to, what to, but the why to. And as I like to say, safely. And that's one of the things that definitely sets our organizations apart from the rest of the industry as a whole is the education, is the training, is the awareness. And when I get in front of folks that are here in Las Vegas and local 357 Southern Nevada chapter NECA, even if they're not there for a full elective course or a full curriculum night, our JTC is still open for them to come through for whatever time they can spare sometimes to just get a introduction to. And sometimes that little introduction to, or having tools or having the product in their hands is better than nothing at all. And it's that availability that we've put forth to everybody that I think is one of the hugest differences.
And that kind of brings me to another kind of question or thought I was having is you're talking about the difference, right? What sets us apart? Any of us can go, whether we Google or use AI or something we can get information, right? We can get facts. But what sets us apart is this training, the ability to do the work. And so what would all of you, right? Like what does our industry need to know, to recognize about what we're doing in this world of technology, so to speak, on the job sites, right? If we would say in the field and in our training in our classrooms, like what's the impact? What's important about what we're doing now?
So there's quite a few things that are important. Number one, we are trying to stay on top of what new technologies are coming out and get that training out as fast as we possibly can. And it's a benefit to the apprentices, but it's also a benefit for on-demand training.
Mm.
You think about a local that gets or a chapter gets a data center job, and they have no knowledge about what has to happen in a data center. We have the resources available that we can provide that in an on-demand training format. And I just had a conversation with somebody in Montana about that very thing. And it's like, okay, tell me what you need and we'll make it happen. So we have the flexibility where we can, be that resource.
Oh, that's huge. Like, yeah, because some of this work, or a lot of it, is new, and some areas have never
Yep.
seen it um, in person, if you will, right? So
Right.
it's a whole different level.
Well, one other thought on that too is we do have a lot of training partners that will be willing to go out to job sites or go into a training center and do specific training. And I'll use Temple Communications as an example. The fiber industry is blowing up right now, and they're scheduling typically about at least one fiber training session per month. And that's an asset that, we just can't do away with. It's so important to get our people trained on the fiber optic technologies.
Yeah. And I'm looking kind of at Matt and Jeff. Not that you're both not. I think we're pretty immersive, overlapping industry. But looking at the two of you, for like one of you deals with training a lot, one of you deals with that job site, right? The work of this. Like, what are you all saying as far as the impact that it's having right now, like today, yesterday, on our industry? Matt, what are you saying as far as training? Like, what would you say with regard to that?
Wow. I like Jim's point about Tempo Communications, and I was just speaking with someone about a very very upcoming Tempo Communications collaboration with Electrical Train Alliance in Oregon, and here was a classic example of a need, and the need was driven by response to the work, to the contractors, to the industry, and the solutions that were given, and that was to organize a training opportunity for the members and the contractors to be able to successfully complete the work efficiently, on time, under budget. Everything that IBW NICA, all their selling points, so to say, and why it's beneficial to use our labor and our contractors is supported by the training opportunities, is supported by the fact that when called upon and needed, both reactively and proactively, we make it happen. And those training opportunities, I'm seeing it's not just limited to the commonplace things like right now, like fiber optics or structured cabling in general, which could be considered fiber optics or copper, basically Cat6 Ethernet cable, the kind of stuff you'll find in your house, but that wireless element. And the basis of that training is starting to overflow into the what years ago we used to consider high tech, or just the manufacturer touched, but is the cybersecurity.
Mm.
Is it being installed safely? Is it an appliance that is an IoT device that's talking on a network that a member or a contractor is installing? Is it safe physically, logically? And We want to make sure that that we're not introducing any threats into our networks and into our commonplace activities these days. Those are some of the things that are really, really emerging, and that we have discussed already, that we have already implemented in our training initiatives at our JATC, that NICA and IBW and ETA have been amazing with, that have been instrumental to making commonplace training items And we're seeing those things more and more, and it's impacting the way that the trainers and the JATCs have to address these training items. And it's not just, hey, we're going to do a one-off lab on how to terminate cable, but this is part of a growing and a larger picture of fully emerged, fully converged systems that affect our everyday lives.
Wow.
Yeah, Jim is right on this. Is on demand and requiring a lot of good vendor partnerships for that content as you need it. Because we're not in the concrete industry; we're in electrification and technology, and we're at the tip of the spear of constant change. And so, I don't think we've been here ever in humanity. I mean, it was said in 2020 that the decade of 2030 would see more progress than the previous 100 years or even ever. So how does not just training evolve to be agile, just like our industry? You're right. I mean, it's hard to create a formal program that might be ANSI accredited, which can be very rigid and a slow process, right? But how do we reflect that for the realities of our industry? It's not just the training, but even the codes and standards and best practices and those renewal cycles. Is a 3 year cycle for the code adequate for the constant change that we have? I mean, those are the things that we're having to reinvent our industry, not just our industry, but our preparedness, our training, and our code standards and best practices. How do we do that to be agile, but to be like Matthew said, we have to be have to protect our consumers and the workers.
Hmm. And this, so you're saying safety, and I think, okay, so I am saying not we. When you hear safety, for me, you start first of all maybe thinking glasses, gloves, boots, right? Those are things you think about. You think about OSHA code. You may even go into like electric shock and start going PPE and those sorts of things. But it's like, man, safety is one. It has to be safe. You have to work safe regardless of what kind of electrical work you're doing, what you're installing, right? What you're working with. But then there's that other safety, right? That what we're putting in works, that the consumer, that customer. So I just think it's so interesting to me, how it all fits in and this adaptability. You all are already talking about it. Like the code, you're talking about, okay, is this even relevant, in a few months? I mean, that's
So a couple of things, and Matt, I love that you brought up cybersecurity because that is a ticking time bomb right now. When you really look at what we're doing on networks, computer networks, and all of the devices that our industry is placing on the network, and the liability involved with somebody getting in through a back door because somebody didn't do something right when they were tying in that device on the network. And that is a safety issue. It's not a physical safety issue. It's a network safety and a business safety point. We are absolutely addressing that. Codes and standards are addressing cybersecurity now. So, it's an item that, 20 years ago, you really didn't think about it. And you really didn't think about, okay, if the network goes down, it's going to be an inconvenience. But now businesses rely on those networks. If that network goes down because it was hacked through a back door, somebody didn't do something right, it's millions of dollars that these companies are losing. And that's a big issue that we have to address in the industry.
that's
Yeah, we're at the risk of jinxing this recording. There will be a network glitch that will freeze or something. So imagine now that's a self-driving car, right? Or a remotely performed surgery, which we're on at the cusp of being able to do that, right? So it's rethinking what life safety is. Yeah, cybersecurity. Um, yeah, we have the risk of attacks from our adversaries, let's say China, Russia, whatever. But the very simplest level, that structured cable, that the physical layer, is vulnerable because if it's not reliable, right? You don't have to worry about a high tech attack when the cabling is the largest source of network failures. And so when Jim and I and Matthew when we talk to our code the standards committee or the code process, it's like the code for the last 120 plus years when it was invented was really for to prevent shock and fires, to protect the occupants and the workers. But the applications on that cable is life safety too, right? The latency, which drives that response time for a self-driving car, or ultra low latency to where you could have real-time response like remotely performed surgery, right? And so, yeah, you could still have a cable that meets the code, but fails in terms of the application, right? So we have to adapt to that reality.
Yeah.
Like, that's major. I mean, I'm sitting here like, again, there's the moments of inconvenience, when something's not working, an app's not working properly, and I can't do, that's truly just me being spoiled sometimes. But then there's when you get into, you talked about, this security where, and things like multi-factor authentication can be such a pain. You're like, oh, I got to put in this code again. But it's like, there's a reason, there is a reason for that and why we're having to back it up. But I mean, when you start talking about things like people's finances, right? I mean, this is a big deal, right? It's being able to pay your bills and take care of your family or, whatever. But then you're talking about surgeries, driving car. I mean, that's like, wow. I don't know. Like,
And that idea goes further and further. Just yesterday, I had a phone call from a previous client and business relationship, and said, "Hey, Matt, I need to talk to somebody about my network for my lighting and my network for my power." I says, "Okay, cool. I see where you're going with this." And he says, "I see all of these new codes and standards in front of me. What is UL 924? What is NEC 726? What is this stuff?" And this individual, he'd been a designer in the electrical industry for over 25 years. Well, these are new standards, new code items that affect emergency lighting, that affect fault managed power delivery. And I love how these items were just covered not too long ago in the the NECA Emerge conference. That these things, they are, as Jim mentioned, it's beyond common everyday basic practice, but it is influencing our industry to where contractors and consumers now have these code compliance and best practice issues to follow and standards to follow for these systems. Fault managed power. It's a way of delivering power via class 4 power. It's in the code book now. That's completely revolutionizing the idea of power delivery and what powers our lights and how it's powered. Now these electrical designers and systems integrators are putting it in emergency lighting powered by power over Ethernet and by class 4 power, utilizing batteries. I mean, practices that several years ago, if you brought that up as a viable option on a build, you would have been laughed at. But now they're facing it as a reality. These things are happening every day now, and it's not a matter of when they come, they're already here.
Yeah, there's so many things happening right now. It's a perfect storm of not enough workers and not enough energy for what we want, and the advent of edge computing and AI, an AI data center. That's going to use almost a gigawatt of power. I mean, that's like a nuclear plant. That's just one data center. And I heard that there's going to be over 900 or maybe 300, whatever the number is. It might roughly about 20 data centers per 50 states, right? That's on the rise. At the same time that we want to put EV chargers all over across America. At the same time that there's a push to remove gas ovens to replace it with electricity. So that energy demand is not going away, and part of that's driven by our appetite for data and broadband. That's not going away. We want it faster, a lot of data and video instantly. So that requires a lot of power. So we're not going to go back to dial up and flip phones. No, that's here. So we have to be more efficient with our buildings and those technologies that Matthew just talked about, fault managed power, PoE. It continues to rise, not just the power levels, but the number of devices it could power. And those devices are becoming more efficient. And just look at the LED, the advent of the LED. That's become so efficient that it can be powered by Article 722, 725, right? The stuff that was typically in a limited energy scope of work. And so now, if you could do the lights, IT equipment, why not the fan coil units or the I've seen plumbing faucets that are connected to the internet for sensors and smart. So everything, I get back to that IoT comment, everything
Yeah.
is connected and being connected
And
and powered.
those two technologies, there's so much opportunity for those two technologies to work together.
Mm.
I mean, you think about it, I just gave this example to somebody the other day. If you think about, maybe there's a greenhouse facility that doesn't have power in a greenhouse, or data in a greenhouse, you could run a composite cable with fiber and 18.4 for fault managed power, and then power your PoE. You have the communication through the fiber, and the possibilities are endless. And I think there's so many possibilities that you can utilize those two new technologies, and it's going to kind of revolutionize the way we do things in the future. Whether, if it's, as opposed to running a whole new service for that greenhouse, right? Now you're going to power the fault managed power, give you 110, 120 volt to the greenhouse. You can convert to PoE and get all your lighting. You can hook up IoT sensors to monitor the temperature, the humidity. It's just endless what you can do with those technologies.
Yeah, some of the low hanging fruit is the lighting. That we talk about. Like if you're in a retail business, I think that the lighting takes about 3/4 of the energy budget is just for lights, and it could be powered by LED and PoE. So those are the early targets to do this and to be more efficient with the buildings we have. I mean, I know that there's that hotel that we talk about in Fort Worth. It's a Marriott property, 110 rooms, 18 stories, all powered by one rack in the basement. They're already using a third less energy, right? And so that's the operating cost over the life of the system that uses much of their energy. So that's just one major brand that's got 8,000 properties globally. So they're seeing what's happening, right? So we're not going to curb the power and data appetite, but we can be better stewards of the power that we do have to be more efficient. And that's going to be a driver. Couple that with tax incentives to be more energy efficient, being tax credits for having less waste, less material. Some of that material is less copper and less conduit, things like that. And going from AC to DC has a lot of waste inherently. But to go direct DC, like from renewables, imagine that having a solar panel system directly DC powering all your buildings. So there's a big need for that, and I think it's getting a lot of attention. So the timing and everything, timing of life is everything. I think the time is now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking like if we had done this podcast, which probably wouldn't have been doing this podcast 10 years ago, 5 years ago, what would we be talking about? But I'm like, if 6 months ago, the four of us were talking, it's like we would be even having then different conversations. So the need to adapt and the need to stay current and open-minded. Because I think it was you were talking about something that or maybe it was Matt, but if we had brought certain things up, at one point they'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, nobody's going to do that. That's not going to happen. And I think as soon as we catch ourselves saying that, that's probably the moment when we have to say, wait a minute, because we were saying that about XYZ, and so here we are, like, there are things here and now that we've got to be doing. And then I'm sure you all have an idea, or at least kind of your finger on the pulse, if you will, of what's coming ahead. Like, how do we adapt? How do we plan for this in training and on the job sites? Like, what do we do?
Well, 10 years ago, Zoom meant you were going fast in a car.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's so good. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
okay.
we'll be having a conversation 6 months from now, and we'll be going talk. Yeah, and we'll be saying, like, back in the day,
Yeah.
here's how we did it.
Exactly.
I think that talking to the look to 2030, who would have thought, right? Who would have thought we'd have getting into a car with a stranger? Who would have thought that we'd be getting into a driverless car? Who would have thought that we'll have haptics, like all five senses transmitted and received over the internet, right? It's not just hearing, and sight. Now it's the sense of feel, right? And we have haptics. You have a haptic setting on your cell phone so that you could feel the keyboard and the movement, right? If you have a gaming console, Xbox or PlayStation, you get that tactile feedback for immersiveness. They're Ericsson, who's a major manufacturer of wireless equipment. They're preparing for the five senses by 2030. So imagine the sense of feel, and it makes that idea of virtual surgery or remotely performed surgery, right, a reality. So you say, who would have thought about that? We've had robotic surgery for decades here in America, right? The progression is someone in a different state, right? Because there's probably a shortage of specialists. I think after COVID, 38 times more home-based healthcare is out there. So people are getting used to a virtual type of world. And so that type of technology makes virtual more realistic with the immersiveness of it.
Yeah.
We just incorporated physical therapy over the internet with our healthcare, and my wife tried it out. She was having some back issues, reached out to the company that we have through our insurance provider, and they sent her an iPad and some sensors. She logged on with them, did physical exercises. They monitored the exercises and adjusted the exercises to fill the needs that she had for physical therapy. And it's like 10 years ago, we would not have this conversation. It's crazy.
No, absolutely right, Jim. Think about this with training, and the thought just occurred to me because I've seen this before, but it's becoming more widespread to do virtual training for high risk tasks, lockout, tag out. I remember, I remember seeing a demo for virtual testing a pole prior to climbing. Right? How the olden days, it's still a tried and true way. You take a 2 or 3 pound hammer, you hit the pole, and based on the sound and the feedback, you know if it's a dead or decaying pole. Now you could virtually grab it and hit it, and you get that feedback.
Yeah.
But you're in a room with goggles and a glove on, right? So you can virtually test and know how to do it without actually putting a student at risk to do that exercise or that task.
Yeah, the idea of the implementation of whether you would call it AR, XR, VR, all these different types of virtual reality. There's the it's there's a lot of different things that we can do with that, and know that we already are doing that. And that all integrates not only into the training aspect, but what kind of technology is being utilized in the field today. If you walk onto a job today, you will be hard pressed to find a full set of physical sheet prints. You'll be hard pressed to find even somebody carrying around a half sheet set or 11 by 17s. Most people have it on some form of company controlled iPad. It's all digital. As builts are digital. The sheet sets are digital, and it's instead of a two-dimensional rendering. I mean, a lot of the drawings these days are in a three-dimensional drawing. So we're seeing more and more of that, and that's even being reflected in how we're training in the classroom. Not only utilizing the augmented virtual reality so our students can start to get the concepts of performing basic mechanical functions, but also how to look at the job, how to approach the job, how to have a different mindset and perception when they're looking at completing the task in both the training element as well as on the job. Going back to the whole idea of whatever it takes to make our members the most productive and efficient in the field. That's what's going to keep our industry moving and going to keep our organizations moving forward together in a productive way. I find it amazing. And I think that idea of being adaptive and being proactive with how we accomplish this is going to be amazing.
Yeah. And there's no, I thought about, well, what happens if we don't adapt? What happens if we aren't staying up on it? And then I realized that's not even a question. That's not even a conversation. One, because we're not doing that, right? We're clearly not sitting back and just kind of waiting to see. So I think it's, as we're kind of wrapping up, like, what's something that you would say, like, how would you kind of end this to emphasize the importance of us being adaptable, of the things that are coming, of what we're doing? Like, what would you say to, I guess, our industry, our listeners, about that, about where we're headed?
I would say don't be afraid of the technology because the fear factor is always going to be there, but we adapt every single day.
Mhm.
Fact.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the old adage of probably working smarter. Not that there's virtue in being a hard worker, but you don't have to overthink it because we're in the advent of AI, where it's going to reduce the learning curve,
Mhm.
right? That there's going to be some first line of troubleshooting. It's going to be done by AI with electronics because of its IoT. That equipment is intelligent. It's already there, so it's going to do first level diagnostics, repair, and it's probably going to be even the first level for cybersecurity. Instead of a person, it's AI, but also with the equipment and materials that we buy. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. You could probably still see a network engineer trying to make their own patch cord, right? Jim or Matt, that they'll go get a piece of Cat6 cable, trying to put a connector on there. And oftentimes it doesn't work because that's not what they're paid to do. They're paid to do coding and scheming and configuration, not to build a cord. That same cord, patch cord, you could buy from a reputable manufacturer. It's certified, tested for $5 all day long. So why would you pay? I mean, the economics aren't there to do that. So we're seeing a lot more pre-terminated assemblies, copper and fiber, even things like in a data center where it's ribbonized fiber, you can't terminate those in the field anyway. So they're already moving to a pre-manufactured solution. Why wouldn't that same type of assembly be made to be deployed for a building backbone network, right? To where you can plug it and play it, and because we already have so much work to handle, it's such a learning curve. Just use those vendor partnerships and that creativity with pre-terminated solutions to do what's a commodity, to free our technicians and wire them up to do more strategic thinking.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our labor, our time is our commodity. Our labor, our time in accomplishing tasks is what is beneficial. And Jeff, I really like the fact that you brought up that, we have so much to do. We have so many things. We don't have it's we need to be efficient with how we accomplish these things. And identifying those tasks and utilizing those labor and those manufacturer partnerships and relationships will help us to accomplish more and to be efficient while we do it, and to keep the customers happy. Some of those pre-terminated manufacturer solutions, they still have to be installed correctly. They still have to be handled. They still have to be certified, tested, and they still have to be maintained. So a lot of these changes, some folks in the industry, they look at change like it's a bad thing because they feel as though it's going to take away from something that they're doing. I like to point out to people that this moment you feel like something is being taken away from your tasks or from your job, you're not realizing of what's being added, what's being given, what the next revolution of that is. And I like to, in the words of Will Rogers, you can be on the right tracks, but you're going to get run over if you don't move. You got to keep moving. And I like to congratulate anybody that's part of the IBW, part of NECA, that's sitting in the JATC. You're on the right track. Just keep moving. Just keep it going. What you're learning today, guess what? You'll have to relearn in a few years from now because it's going to change. It's going to evolve. But guess what? That's great. Someone the other day, we were discussing the CEC or the CEU requirements for some of the credentialing courses that we offer here at my JTC. And they were looking at the fact that they had to do 18 CEUs over 3 years as a bad thing. I said, you're welcome. That's great. It's a forced opportunity for you to continue to learn. But that's what this is all about. The fact that we invest our time, invest our energies to continue to learn, to continue to advance. That's just one of the things that makes us the best.
Yeah, lifetime
Yeah.
learners, right?
It is,
Lifetime.
yes.
And particularly, I think it's across the board, right, in the electrical construction industry, but it's certainly a major factor
Yeah.
when we talk about, this. Thank you all so much. Here's what I'm figuring out. This conversation will happen, like we're all getting back together, and doing this regularly. And even if it's once a year, I think it's important to come back to this topic because I guarantee if we come back together next year, same time, right? March of 2025, we're going to be having different conversation completely to some extent, right? I mean, some of it'll be the same, keep moving forward, don't stop, that sort of thing. But the technology is going to have changed and advanced so much. It's unreal. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Matt, Jeff, Jim. Thank you for being with us and talking about this. Okay, so I love moments when I feel smarter just from the people I've been around. And this was absolutely one of those. The whole Flintstones to Jetson thing makes so much sense. I remember watching the Jetsons and it all seemed so far-fetched. Never, ever did I dream that we would be doing some of those things. So again, this was just a fantastic conversation. And I really do think we'll revisit this again next year just to see where we are, what's changed, what's new, that sort of thing. Big thanks to Jeff, Jim, and Matt for being with us and sharing all their expertise and insight. That was incredible. Big thanks to you, the listeners, for joining us. You're why we do this. And remember, we want to hear from you. So let us know what you want to talk about. If you want to be a guest, send an email, saywhat, that's SAYWATT @electricaltrainingalliance.org. Let's see, just stay connected until the next one. You can see us on social media. We've got newsletters that go out. You can subscribe so you don't miss an episode of the podcast. Stay powered up, and we'll see you next time.
Say what?